In the room next to ours, where we three childhood friends slept, there used to hang a human skeleton. Its bones would clatter against the wind every night and every day by us. In those days, because our parents were determined to make us excel in all subjects, on one hand we were given lessons in the slaying of Meghnad by our teacher and in osteology by a student from the Campbell Medical School. Those who knew us needn't be told how far their endeavour was successful, and those who didn't, from them it is better kept a secret. Many years have passed since then, and in many years, like the skeleton from that room, osteology too had disappeared from our brains into some dark abyss where no one could trace it. Few days later, I had to spend the night in that room due to lack of space elsewhere for some reason. As sleep evaded me in that unfamiliar surrounding, I tossed and turned through the night, listening to the church clock announcing the hours. After some time, the lamp too that was in the corner of the room, after gasping and throbbing for about 5 minutes, died out. Recently, few accidents had occurred in our family, so naturally, as darkness engulfed the room, thoughts of death clouded in my mind. It appeared to me that to this grand cosmos, the light of a lamp extinguishing into the everlasting darkness like one this night, and the light of little lives going out of men day and night are the same thing. Gradually, my thoughts travelled to that skeleton, and as I was trying to imagine about the life of the man or the woman to whom that skeleton belonged, I suddenly became conscious of something walking around my bed, groping on the dark walls. I could clearly hear the sounds of its heavy breathing. It appeared as if it was looking for something and unable to find it. It was pacing across the room with quick steps. I was quite certain that this was but a mere manifestation of my sleepless brain, and the sound of the hasty footsteps was nothing but the sound of the blood gushing through my temples. Nonetheless, a cold shiver ran down my spine. Quite forcefully, in order to get rid of my unnecessary fear, I called out aloud, "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped by the side of my bed, and a reply came.
It is me. I have come in search of my skeleton. I do not know where it has disappeared.
Showing any kind of fear before an object of my own imagination seemed irrational. So I clutched my side pillow more tightly and calmly responded, "What a fine job you've set on at this deadly hour of the night! But will that skeleton be of any use to you now?" In that dark room, the answer was whispered from the other side of my mosquito net.
What are you saying? The bones that caged my heart lay in that skeleton. The magnetic allure of my 26-year-old beauty blossomed around it. Then, would I not feel the desire to see it?
I agree. What you say is just. Well then, you carry on with your search while I try to catch some sleep. The voice responded.
You seem to be alone. Let me then sit here for a while. We can have a chat for some time. Earlier, too, I used to sit and talk with men. But that was 35 years ago. Since then, I have only travelled in the winds around crematoriums, breathing mournful cries. Sitting with you today, I can again revisit my old days, chit chat like a human once again.
I could feel that someone sat close to my neck. Finding no way out of this quandary, I resigned myself to reply with a forced excitement. It's a nice idea. Then tell me a happy story that can cheer our hearts.
If you want to listen to a hilarious story, then let me tell you about my life.
Just then, the church clock announced 2.
When I was a young girl, there was one man of whom I was scared beyond wits, my husband. Before him, I felt just like a fish caught on hooks. To me, he was a complete stranger who had snatched me away on fish hooks from the tranquil waters of my childhood home. From him, there was no escape. My husband passed away 2 months after our marriage, leaving my friends and relatives to wail and lament on my behalf. My father-in-law, after carefully inspecting several signs, said to my mother-in-law, and I clearly remember his words, "The scriptures mention of Vishkanyas. This girl is one of them. Are you listening? How are you enjoying the story?"
Interesting, I replied. The beginning is very amusing, I must say.
Okay, listen then. I merrily returned to my father's house. Gradually, as I became older, I realized that a beauty like mine was rare, not so easily found. Although people around me tried to cover up this fact. What do you think?
Maybe it's possible, I murmured. But I have never seen you, remember?
Never seen me? Haven't you seen my skeleton? I was just joking. How I wish I could show to you that in those 2 hollowed sockets once resided a deep set of dark doe-like eyes, and that the horrid smiling naked dentures that you now see bears no resemblance to the soft ruby smile that once adorned those soft lips. And on those many dry bones rested such grace, such elegance. My Junoesque beauty, the complete allure of a shapely young woman that blossomed around that skeleton. To give you an idea of that makes me smile, but it also makes me furious. Even the most reputed and renowned medical practitioners of my time would never have believed that a body such as mine can be used to teach osteology. I know of a doctor who once compared me to a fully blossomed golden champak, meaning that while all the other human bodies could be used to exemplify anatomy and osteology, my body was as dainty and beautiful as the champak flower. Could anyone ever think that beneath that golden champak lay a hideous skeleton? I was well aware that when I walked, from every movement of my body radiated a magnetic charm that illuminated the surrounding. Just like a diamond that glitters in light and illuminates everything around it. Sometimes I used to spend hours with my eyes fixed on my hands. My 2 elegant hands that could sweetly put a leash on even the most dominant of men, making them captive to my will. Perhaps when Subhadra had surprising the entire Trilok steadfastly ridden her chariot with Arjuna by her side, she too might have had possessed such slim, tender arms, such crimson palms, and such dainty fingers. But that unadorned, unclothed, shamelessly naked old skeleton of mine has given false witness to you against me. while I could only stand helplessly as a mute spectator. And that is why all my anger is reserved only for you in this world. I wish you could witness for yourself that 16-year-old effervescent beauty of mine. My blushing countenance would have surely at once snatched away all your slumber, and also write off from your restless brain all osteological learning.
If you would have been alive, I could have sworn on you that I have not retained an iota of those lessons in my head. The only image that is now radiantly glowing before my eyes against this dark background of the night is that of your youthful charm that could have had the entire world fascinated. You need not describe any further.
In the Ondur Mahal, I was all alone, for I had no female companions, and my elder brother had sworn not to marry. Sitting by myself under the trees in the garden, I used to think that the whole universe was in love with me, that I was the only object of attention of the stars in the sky, that the winds sighed in anguish as they brushed past me on some pretext, and that the straws on the mat on which I sat, had it had any life, would have fallen senseless at the touch of my feet. I used to imagine that every young man of this world are like blades of grass standing at my feet. And I don't know why, but my heart used to grow heavy. My brother's friend Shoshi Shekhar became our family doctor after he graduated from the medical college. I had often stolen glances of him before, from behind a curtain. My brother was a strange man. He never bothered to look at this world with an open mind. It was as if the world was too crowded for him, and so he gradually took shelter in a corner, at the brink, away from all. Only Shoshi Shekhar was his friend, and by this virtue, the only young man outside of my family whom I could always get to see. And when, each evening, I resumed the role of the empress under the flowering tree in my garden, then every man in this world, having incarnated as Shoshi Shekhar, took refuge at my feet. Are you listening? What are you thinking?
That I wish I were him.
The first time we met was when I was suffering from fever one rainy day. He had come to examine me. I was lying with my face towards the window, so that the crimson hue of the evening sky can soften the paleness of my sick complexion. When the doctor entered the room and began to examine my face, I imagined looking through his eyes. In that dim evening light, I saw lying on the soft pillow a slightly frail but delicate flower-like countenance that was darkened by the shadow cast by the modestly lowered lids of a deep set of eyes, and the forehead covered by locks of uncombed tresses. The doctor told my brother in a soft tone, "I will need to feel her pearls. May I?" I brought out my very well-rounded wrist from beneath the blanket. Regret filled me as I looked at my bare hand. How I wished they were adorned with blue glass bangles. Never before had I seen any doctor so embarrassed about examining a patient's pulse. With trembling fingers, he felt my pulse and measured my temperature. And in that instant, I too could perceive the rate of his heartbeats. You don't believe me?
Yes, of course I do. There is no reason not to. Workings of the mind can easily be detected through the rate of the heart.
After a few more times, my condition deteriorated and I had to be nursed back to health. I realized that the vast multitude of men who attended my soiree dwindled to only one. My little world became desolate except for only one doctor and one patient. In the evenings, I began to clandestinely drape a light orange colored sari, tie my hair into a bun, and decorate it with a garland of Arabian jasmines, and then spend time in my usual spot in the garden with a little mirror in my hand. Well, can one not admire her own beauty? Doesn't the sight become wearisome? No, because I did not see myself with my own eyes. In that loneliness of the garden, I was not one but two. In those moments, I used to gaze at myself through the eyes of the doctor, become bewitched, fall in love, and shower myself with gentle caresses. But despite of it all, my heart clouded with an emptiness, would breathe a sigh moaning like the evening breeze. From that day on, I ceased to feel lonely. When I walked, my downcast eyes observed the movement of my feet, and I couldn't help but wonder what the new graduate doctor might think about my stride. The afternoons were marked by a strange stillness. Under the blazing sky, the streets would become deserted, and the only noise that broke this silence was the distant screech of a flying kite and the cry of the hawker who would pass by our boundary wall, sonorously shouting, "Toys! Do you want toys? Bangles! Do you want bangles?" In that hour, I would spread a milk-white bedsheet, lie on it, and then, carelessly spreading my bare arm, would imagine to myself that some mysterious man, having caught sight of my hand thus lying, held it tightly, planted a kiss on my ruby palms, and then slowly retreated away. How would you like if I ended the story here?
It won't be a bad ending, I replied. Although the story will remain incomplete, however, I can easily spend the rest of the night imagining the ending for myself.
But in that case, the story gets too serious. It will lose all amusement. The skeleton inside it? How will it reveal its ugly smiling face to you then? Listen to what happened thereafter. After his practice picked up, the doctor opened his chamber at the ground floor of our house. Then I would sometimes casually ask him about various medicines, poisons, and what can easily kill a man. The topic of medicine would make the doctor loquacious, turning him into an eloquent speaker. And listening to him, death became as familiar to me as the sun and the moon. Death and love were now the only things that I saw on earth. Not much is left. My story is almost complete.
The night too is almost over, I mumbled.
Few days later, I realized that the doctor had become absent-minded and acted rather self-conscious and embarrassed around me. One day, I noticed him come impressively dressed, asking me to borrow my brother's carriage from him, for he had to go somewhere that night. Unable to control my curiosity, I impatiently went to my brother and after beating around the bush for some time, asked him, "Dada, where is the doctor going with your carriage?" "To die," my brother said in brief. Don't kid. Where is he going, really? To get married, Dada explained. Oh, really? Is that so? I replied with a loud guffaw. Gradually, I came to know that the doctor was receiving a gift of rupees 12,000 from his wife's family. But why did he have to insult me thus by hiding this from me? Did I ever fall crying at his feet, begging him not to marry? For it would then break my heart and kill me? You can never trust a man. I have known only one man in my life, but in that moment I had learned the eternal truth. That day, when the doctor returned before evening after checking his patients, I went to him and asked merrily, I heard it is your wedding tonight, doctor. Is it true? He seemed to become not only a little awkward upon seeing my mirth, but also discontent. But why is there no arrangement for any band or music? Is a wedding really such a merry occasion? He asked with a sigh. I had never heard of such a thing. With an impatient laughter, I said, No, this will not do. There has to be light and music in a wedding. I bothered my brother so much that he finally set to make all the arrangements befitting a proper wedding. All the while, I kept on chatting about the new bride. What would happen when she will come? What will I do? And so on. Doctor, would you still go on checking your patient's pulse? I giggled. The working of people's minds, especially the minds of men, are not so easy to discern. But I could easily understand that my teasing words had pierced his heart like deadly arrows. The ceremony was to be held late in the night. In the evening, the doctor and my brother spent their time sharing drinks on our terrace. They both had been a slave to this habit. At last, the moon came up. With a smiling face, I went up to them and said, Doctor, did you forget? It is time to leave already. I must let you in on a secret here. During this time, I had sneaked into the doctor's chamber and collected a powder, a portion of which I had at an opportune moment mixed in his glass stealthily. I had learned from the doctor himself about which powder, if consumed, can be mortally harmful. The doctor finished the glass in one gulp and then, looking at me with a pained expression, said in a heavy emotional voice, Okay then, I must set forth. The music began to play. I draped a Banarasi, brought out all my jewelleries from the safe, and adorned them each, filled the parting of my hair with vermilion, and under the bakul tree in my garden prepared a bed. It was a beautiful night, bathed in the glow of the moon. The cool breeze of the southern winds robbed away all weariness of the torpid world. The scent of bela and jasmine wafted through the air. When the music grew faint and the moon grew dimmer until darkness took over, and the entire material world, with all its relations, the sky, the trees, the familial bonds, all began to fade into nothingness like mere illusion before my eyes, I closed my lids and smiled faintly. My desire was that this smile, like an intoxicant, would stick on my lips when I shall be found by all. I wished to carry along with me this smile as I would slowly step into the bridal chamber in this infinite night. But where is that bridal chamber? Where have my bridal clothes and ornaments gone? When I was woken by a rattling sound from inside of me, I saw 3 young men learning osteology with the help of my bones, and pointing at my heart with a cane where hitherto pulsated joys and sorrows, and where each day bloomed my petals of youth, the teacher taught the names of all the bones. And that last smile, which I had caused to blossom on my lips, did you see any sign of it? How was the story? Did you like it?
It was very enthralling. At that moment, the first crow cawed. I asked, "Are you still there?" There was no response. The first ray of the dawn entered the room.